To start strong, it would be the best if he could begin by answering what is a dog.
They are valuable to us and we are valuable to them.
Hello everyone. Today we are very excited and honored to bring on Dr. Nick Thompson, who is a widely recognized and respected figure in the veterinary world. Dr. Thompson completed his degree in veterinary medicine and surgery in 1992, and a year later acquired an honors degree in pathological science, focusing mainly on immunology, molecular biology, virology, bacteriology, and parasitology. Since then, his progress has been exponential. Having practiced in numerous cities in the UK, he decided to train in homeopathy at the Royal London Homeopathic Hospital. More impressively, Dr. Thompson completed his IVAS certification in veterinary acupuncture in 1998 and in the same year passed the membership exams for the Faculty of Homeopathy. Following this, Dr. Thompson opened his very own practice in 1999, which has been providing holistic care for over 25 years. Along with this, Dr. Thompson was the founding member and the first president of the Raw Feeding Veterinary Society. His impact on the nutrient requirements of canines has been extensive, because of which he became a highly sought-after consultant for animal feed companies all around the world. Dr. Thompson, thank you for sharing your valuable time with us. To start strong, it would be the best if he could begin by answering what is a dog.
It's a great question, guys, and just want to say thank you very much for inviting me to share your journey with you. I have many Indian friends over here in Europe, and it's wonderful to be able to join you guys on your journey in India itself. And I wish you all the very, very best. Raw food is a wonderful thing, and exciting to see that you guys have understood the power to give health to our dogs. It's a very exciting place to be. So well done you, and thank you for inviting me to be on your journey. Thank you. You asked, what is a dog? I've never been asked that before, realistically. Most basic.
It's a great question. No, it's a fantastic
question. A dog is a carnivore which has, over arguably the last 200,000 years, chosen to live beside us as human beings. We use them as hunting dogs, we use them as shepherding dogs, we use them as keeping you warm at night, keeping your children warm at night, to guard our houses. We use them, historically we use them to guard the cave and to help us, to be our eyes and our ears, and they are immensely valuable. They are valuable to us and we are valuable to them. And there is this beautiful symbiosis, I think. And I think that the important thing is that we eat species appropriate food. We humans are omnivorous, and therefore we can choose to eat lots of meat, some meat, or very little meat. And we can choose because we're omnivorous. We're swimming in this big swimming pool, which is between cats at the top. They are obligate carnivores, and cattle and sheep and goats down at the bottom, which are obligate herbivores. We are in the middle, and we can swim either way. And dogs, they are in the swimming pool of omnivory, but they're way up at the top. They're not cats, but they are way up at the top of carnivory. So I think it is appropriate that we do feed them a carnivorous diet. It's a species appropriate diet. That, for me, that there are lots of people in India who are eating a vegetarian diet and doing very, very well on a vegetarian diet. And that, I think, is fantastic. And I totally respect that position, but we can do that because a vegetarian diet to many of us is species appropriate. It is not, for me, species appropriate to a dog, because they have this requirement, historical evolutionary requirement, for meat, protein. And I think that we owe it to them, to these companions over many hundreds of thousands of years, to feed a dog like a dog, feed a cat like a cat, feed a horse like a horse, feed a cow like a cow, feed a sheep like a sheep. I think it's as simple as that, really. So I'm afraid that's a very long answer to actually quite a profound question, which is, you thought you'd start simple, but actually that is a very big question that you've asked. And I hope in the 2 minutes that I've given you that begins to answer the question for you.
Yeah, no, that was perfect, Doc. That was perfect.
After interviewing various pet parents and breeders in India, we have come to find out that majority of them feed either rice, roti, which is an Indian bread, or ultra-processed kibble. Could you please tell us what are the implications of feeding a diet high in carbohydrates?
Following on from my previous question, the result in my experience of feeding a dog with a high carbohydrate diet is that it's very easy to move into the areas of nutrient deficiency. It is very easy to cause disease because a high grain carbohydrate vegetarian diet for a dog is a little bit like feeding beef steak or goat to a horse, intro to that species. Now, the reason that many dogs can tolerate a diet which is high in carbohydrate is because they do have at least one foot in omnivory. Omnivory being the ability to eat vegetable material and animal material, and a bit of both. But if we're looking for long-term health and longevity and health span, I no longer talk about lifespan, I'm interested in health span. If we're looking for an extended and very bountiful health span, I think that feeding a species appropriate high animal flesh diet is a very good idea. And I'm talking about bones, I'm talking about meat, I'm talking about organs. It doesn't need to be the finest beef steak that you'll have at the Ritz, but I think that it does need to be clean and well sourced and nutrient. That really is an important way to feed our dogs.
Just to add on to this question, at what age would the health of a dog deteriorate with an ultra-processed diet? Do you want the last 5 years with your dogs in misery at the vet's clinic?
There are people who can smoke 40 cigarettes a day for 80 years and they're still sprightly and healthy at the end of it. There are other people who smoke 5 a day for 10 years and they come down with bronchitis, emphysema, cancer. And so dogs if they're given if they're given a diet which is totally unknown to them from an evolutionary standpoint, I don't think we can expect a good health span. You might get it. There are many dogs in India who've eaten a vegetarian diet and they've been fine. I would suggest that perhaps they are the exception. And the way to stack the cards in your favor is to move as much as you can towards a species appropriate diet. We feed cattle like cattle, we feed cats like cats, we feed dogs like dogs. Simple as that.
That was really insightful, Doctor. So we are aware that you practiced over 30 years in veterinary medicine. So we just wanted to know, in terms of lifestyle factors, where do you put diet in that continuum? So what role would diet play for the canine's health on various other factors given?
I'm laughing because these are such wonderful questions, and I do a lot of interviews, and usually I'm not impressed with the quality of the questions, but guys, and I'm not just being nice, these are great questions and they're really,
as you say, insightful. So well done, you. So
where does food come on the continuum of producing or maintaining good health? I would say try fasting for 3 days and then ask the question, how important is food? And if 3 days is not long enough, try a week and then answer the question, how important is food to everything? I would suggest that's an oblique way of saying that I think that food is so oxygen, number one.
Fluids, number 2.
Water, clean, fresh, beautiful water, number 2. Number 3, food. Everything else is downstream from these things. And I think that you can have the most advanced medical system they do in the United States, for example. And yet there's something like 37th out of 200 countries in the world. They're about 37th in terms of longevity. And the reason, as far as I'm concerned, great respect to many American colleagues, is that most Americans eat very badly. They eat a lot of food, they eat a lot of calories, their nutrition is very poor. I would suggest that possibly the average Indian nutrition is better than the average American nutrition. I'm not talking calories, I'm not talking quantity, I'm talking quality. Possibly. If the food is not correct, then I think that it's very difficult to maintain good health. You can't outrun a bad diet. Yeah, so if your diet's not right, you can have the best medicine in the world and you still will not be healthy. You might be in the short term, maybe for a year or two, but if the diet's wrong, then it will catch up with you, very much so. And the same is true for our dogs.
And just to add on to that, as you said, you are what you eat. I think that complements it quite well. Can you give us a small snapshot on what a species appropriate diet looks like for a canine, or for, as what we call, a dog in simple terms?
Yes, indeed. A species appropriate diet for a dog, it depends who you talk to, but if you're just looking at the broad strokes, as I've put in my video, I've done a video, raw feeding the basics. The basics of a raw food diet are meat, bone, and organ. Organ is really, really important. And the beauty is it's highly nutritious and it's cheap. And so I think that there's a lot of work that we can do in that direction. I will also add green vegetables. I'm very keen on adding some green vegetables to the diet because I think that for millions of years, dogs have been eating herbivores, rabbit, goat, sheep, etc. And inside every herbivore is green vegetable, leafy vegetable material. And I think for millions of years, the canines, carnivores, will eat the intestines at the very least. Maybe some stomach contents, maybe some stomach, but they will be eating intestine and therefore taking on this fermented green probiotic vegetable material. I also like to add NHS. We call it NHS, which is a play on National Health Service, which is the health service in the UK. Nut, herbs and seeds. I think soaked nuts to reduce anti-nutrient factors. Herbs, any herbs that you and I, and spices as well, that we can easily digest. These are very helpful. Turmeric, for example, is wonderful. Parsley, basil, all of these wonderful old ancient herbs are very useful. And also seeds, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, freshly ground and added to food, I think are potentially very, very useful. Again, what we're doing is we are emulating the gut contents of the herbivore. The herbivore provides us with meat and bone, organ, and also skin and horn and all these things. But on the inside, they also provide vegetable material and they provide nuts, herbs and seeds and whatever else the herbivore will have eaten. So that for me is a very simple guideline for how to feed dogs. This is how they've been eating for 45 million years. And so they, I think, know more about canine nutrition than we do.
It's a good joke. They've been eating this since the electrician came and started kibble companies. Since we got electricity. Okay, just that was really brilliant. That's spot on there in terms of how easy it is actually to feed a species appropriate diet. Just moving on with that, to get a personal touch in this discussion, could you give us your personal experience, either with a client or with a dog that you have treated, sort of change this into an intervention where you've added species appropriate food into the mix at the get-go and seen some amazing sort of responses or turnarounds? I think that would be really great to get that personal touch inside.
So a couple of cases, one from a long time ago and one from this morning. So from a long time ago, I was presented with an old English sheepdog, you know, the big shaggy dogs. The dog, she was called Emma. She was 5 years old. And she had never had a solid stool in her life. She had had permanent gut issues all her life. 5 years old, her gut had never been right. And she'd been on 20 different kibbles. The expensive stuff, the cheap stuff, the tin stuff, the everything. Her owner brought her to me, not expecting too much, but you know, Nick, can you help? So we moved her onto a simple raw diet, and she rang me. 2 days later, she rang me, and I thought, oh no, the dog is ill, and she was in tears, and so I I even more thought, oh no, the dog is ill. The dog is, the dog is in surgery. What's happened? And through her tears, she said, Emma has had a solid stool for the first time in her life. Okay. And Emma progressed, and we broadened her diet, and she did great. Her hunger, which went from ravenous, because her body thought she was starving, because all the food that was going in here was just coming straight out, and therefore she was starving. So her appetite settled, her abdominal pain improved, she was happier in herself, she was less snappy, her teeth improved, just all aspects of her health were in equilibrium, were balanced, were really wonderful. So that's the first story. It's a very, very simple story. I could tell you 300, probably more like 3,000 stories if you had long enough, and they're all the same. The story from this morning, and I didn't even know I was going to tell you this, but the story from this morning is that this little Jack Russell, she's 11 years old, she's called Honey, and her owner had seen that the dog was having problems with very bad diarrhea and blood and vomiting and pain and very much distress, and they thought that maybe she had pancreatitis and you know, lots and lots of very uncomfortable gastrointestinal symptoms. So she went to the vet college, where the biggest, the brightest, the best, and they scanned her and they did blood tests and they looked at, you know, all aspects, and they just suggested that the diagnosis was she did have an inflammatory bowel disease. Suggested that she went onto, and there was a list of about half a dozen hydrolyzed special diets from various companies. So the owner took one of the diets home, gave it to the dog, and the dog wouldn't eat it. Tried a second one, tried it with Honey, and she wouldn't eat it. So in desperation, the owner put Honey onto raw food. And with Honey, because she was so ill, it took 2 or 3 weeks for her appetite to come up. She'd been fussy all her life. She's 11 years old. She'd been fussy all her life. Within 3 weeks, she had a fantastic appetite. Within 3 to 4 weeks, all her gut symptoms had ceased. And she was running around chasing squirrels. She was pain-free. She didn't have any wind. Her breath was sweet. She didn't have any gurgling of the stomach. And the diagnosis of IBD has now completely disappeared, and it cost her nothing, because she's got to feed the dog something. Yeah. And so she went from the very expensive, scientifically formulated IBD dried food to real raw food, and Honey was cured. So it's to wonder, and I wasn't even involved at that stage. Okay, that shows how easy it is. The owner, with no medical knowledge whatsoever, she took advice from food companies and what have you, changed the dog and cured what the local vet school could not. So
that's really powerful. It shows it's never too late to change, and even at that age, 11 years old, still the dog quite responded acutely. 4 weeks. That's quite acute, I must say. Very powerful.
I had another Jack Russell Terrier who was presented to me at 16 years old. And the owner had taken the dog from the vet, because the vet was saying, there's nothing we can do. She's 16 years old, she's got IBD, whatever we feed her, she's ill. She's just really, really ill. Diarrhea, pain, blood, all sorts. The owner came to see me, and we just put her on the simplest of diets, raw food diet. Within 2 weeks, she was a new dog, and she had another 2 years at 16 with perfect bowels for the whole time.
It's amazing. So this is our final question. I think it's specific to the Indian population. Our company motto is guided by science, delivered with care. We want to get it right, we want to get it simple, and we want to get it to the customer in a safe way so that there's trust built in there. However, majority of the pet parents that we have been in contact with have been put off by the authority being their vet. And the three major concerns that they've raised is, one, feeding a natural diet that is not thermally induced can lead to deficiency. Second one, the most common of all, pathogens. What are we going to do if the food has nasty bacteria? And the last one, which is quite funny, is that the climate in India is quite hot. So how can a dog eat a high protein / fat diet? Wouldn't this cause a lot of heat related issues? So if you could just briefly get those 3 points across, that would be really great.
Okay, I'm going to do more than that. I'm going to answer 4 questions. And if you can remind me at the end about the Indian climate, we'll do that as well. So that will be 5. Okay, you've asked me 3, I'm going to give you 5. Because this is a well-worn track. So there are 4 elements to the most criticisms from my colleagues in the veterinary profession. And I sympathize because I came out of college not knowing anything about
raw feeding, not knowing much about nutrition, to be honest, because when I was
training, the Hills Corporation took care of all the nutrition, and then the Royal Canin Corporation stepped in, and then there was Purina who stepped in. Yeah, so I'm a vet. What do I need to know about nutrition? But from my earlier answer, I would suggest that all disease relates to nutrition one way or another. So coming back, in 2012, the World Small Animal Veterinary Association, and you can look this up, they criticized the 4 areas of benefits, bugs, balance, and bones. So they said there aren't any benefits, there are bugs in the food, raw foods are imbalanced by their very nature, and bones are dangerous. Okay, benefit, bugs, balance, and bones. And it's well worth looking at those things. You can remember it: benefit, bugs, balance, and bones. And onto that, we're going to add climate. Yeah, because in India it's a lot warmer than in the UK.
Perfect.
Benefit, bugs, balance, and bones. So number 1, benefit. Are there any benefits? And the answer is yes, there are thousands of benefits. Are there any benefits that are recognized by science? Answer, yes, there are. If you look at the Raw Feeding Veterinary Society, the rfvs.info, on their website, there is a position paper where we demonstrate some of the benefits. Another very good source for my colleagues in India is there's a book by Dr. Connor Brady, called Feeding Dogs. And it's basically looking at the debate between dry and raw food. And there are over 500 references, scientific citations within the book, where they look at pros and cons of dry, pros and cons of raw, and then compare. And I'm not giving away the punchline when I say that his analysis, 10 years of analysis, comes out very, 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 very strongly in favor of raw food. Okay, and he demonstrates and categorizes, and there have been many since, the many benefits of raw food. So, benefits, yes, lots. Bugs, yes, there are bacteria within food. However, dogs have evolved over many, many millennia to deal with rotting carcasses, to deal with meat that has been lying around for a long period. Cats eat fresh meat. Yeah, they kill, they eat. That's how lions and tigers and leopards, domestic cats, that's how they do it. Dogs, they are the garbage cleaners of the forest, of the savannah. And they will just clear up after everybody. Look at the hyena, look at the dingo, look at the street dogs in India. They'll eat anything. If there's meat, great. If there's no meat, then they'll eat just whatever's going. They are exposed to bacteria everywhere. And yet, these dogs will do very, very well. There are many, many papers from our detractors saying that bacteria will damage dogs, and bacteria are found in raw food. And I don't doubt there is bacteria in raw food. However, what we do see is there is a vanishingly small number of reports of harm to the dog from that small level of bacteria within the food. On the contrary, I think that that low level of bacteria has a probiotic effect, has a tonifying effect on the immune system, making the gut more healthy. And this is the experience of thousands of raw feeding vets all around. So benefits, bugs, balance. The idea of every meal should be balanced is a fallacy. Even the people at Purina, at Royal Canin, at Hills, they will say every meal has to be balanced, the diet has to be balanced. They will then go home and eat an unbalanced meal. They will feed their children an unbalanced meal. And what will happen is that if you feed a number of unbalanced meals, they will balance themselves. An excess of protein on a Monday will balance with an excess of calcium on a Tuesday, an excess of fat on a Wednesday, etc. So that over a period, you will get all the nutrients. And I think it's important that within a diet that you're exposed to all the nutrients you require over a period of time, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. This is how man and dogs have thrived over the millions of years that we have been on the planet. I don't think there's such a thing, apart from in very artificial environments. There's no such thing as a balanced meal. What we need is a balanced diet. We provide the body with all the nutrients it needs, and it will take from the nutrients that are offered that which it needs. So benefit, bugs, balance, and bones. If you feed raw bones appropriate to the dog, then it is a very, very safe practice. I consider it to be like crossing the road. The risk of crossing the road, there is a risk, but it's very small. The benefit from crossing the road is immense. And if you think how many people cross the road in India every day, okay, you guys, you've got 1 billion, just over, people.
Yeah.
So 1 trillion crossings. How many people damaged or killed on the road? A few hundred, perhaps. So you've got 1 trillion crossings, and you've got a very small number of people who are damaged by crossing the road. And I think bones are similar. And we can, and it's very, very simple, we can teach people how to feed their domestic dogs with bones, because bones will benefit the teeth, will benefit the mind, because they engage the dog. Very good for fiber going through the gut. So many, many, many benefits from feeding bones. So benefit, bugs, balance, and bones, all absolutely in our favor. And then the final one is climate. I said to remind me, but because I did that, I've remembered. So how can we feed raw food in India because the climate is not conducive? The answer is you're just careful as you are with meat for yourself. I have a friend who has a raw feeding business in Dubai, and I think we can actually say that in Dubai, and it hits 55 degrees centigrade in the summer for months, it's actually even hotter than in India. And I think that if those guys can do it in Dubai and other similarly hot desert-like places, if they can do it, you guys can do it, because depending on where you are in India, there are hot months, temperate months, and I think that if we can put railways across the whole of India, we can very much easily improve the health of dogs in India through good old-fashioned traditional nutrition.
That's spot on there. And also with this type of feeding, 60 to 65% of it is water, has a good moisture content. So in fact, I think it's better feeding this way with a good moisture content than feeding dry processed kibble.
I completely agree. I think feeding Indian dogs on a kibble, which is 6% moisture, versus a good old-fashioned raw food diet, I struggle to see how we can justify feeding kibble in hot areas of the world, whereas feeding the dog as your grandfather would have fed the dogs in days of old. I think that there is much wisdom there. Before the days of refrigeration, I hasten to add.
Perfect.
It's been a pleasure to have this discussion with you today. Do you have any concluding remarks for pet owners and vets on why they should give Barffy puppies service consideration?
Yeah, there you go. I'm almost lost for words. So I'm going to take that in two parts. I'm going to speak to dog owners and then I'm going to speak to the vets, if I may. To the dog owners, I'm going to say, how did your grandparents feed dogs, if your grandparents did have dogs? And then I'm going to say, how do you feed your family? Do you feed your family at McDonald's? Do you feed them at Kentucky Fried Chicken every day? Or do you feed them in the traditional way that you and your family have eaten for generation after generation after generation with species appropriate food? That's it. That's all I'm going to say to the common man, the common woman in India, is just think about how food works. You have the wonder of Ayurveda, which teaches balance and true nutrition. And I think that there is wonderful wisdom to be taken from Ayurveda, and don't think that kibble is recognized within the Ayurvedic tradition. So to my professional colleagues, I would say, open your minds and look at species appropriate nutrition. We were all taught at college how to feed cattle, and what we weren't taught at college was to feed cattle on animal protein. We weren't taught to feed species inappropriate diets. Just look at the patient in front of you and think for a second as to how they have evolved, which food system would best suit the hundreds of thousands of metabolic processes that go on within the dog. What would be best for all of those processes? And if you don't want to even go to those lengths, give it a go with your own dog. Just for 2 or 3 weeks, put your dog on a quality raw food diet for just a number of weeks and see with your own eyes. Don't believe me. Don't believe these guys. Don't believe anybody. Believe your dog. I would suggest try, in the best tradition of empirical science, make an experiment, read Dr. Conor Brady's Feeding Dogs, and do a trial for a number of weeks. And contact me. You're welcome to contact me through these gentlemen. I would be very happy to Zoom, to telephone, to communicate and share what is perhaps one of the most wonderful aspects of veterinary medicine that I've come across. I've been in veterinary medicine for 36 years. And raw food feeding is without a doubt the most profound intervention that I've come across.